All right, let's get you a sense of what else we know about this. As you can see there, we're joined now by the chairperson of the Health Committee for the South African United Business Federation. That's Dr. Angelique Coetzee, live to us via our video link this morning. Great to have you on the program, Doc. Thanks as always for making time to speak to us. So you certainly get the sense that there is this unanimous sentiment that this particular subvariant shouldn't necessarily change how we've been doing things so far. But I wonder whether you envision a context where we might have to start thinking differently about how we respond to these subvariants.
Yes, good morning, Ayana, and good morning to all your viewers and listeners out there. You know, look at this XBB.1.5. Look at it as the great-grandchild of Omicron. I think that should put it better into perspective. And if we look at Omicron, and a lot of its subvariants, there's a lot, there's over 1,000 subvariants of Omicron, close to 5,000 subvariants. And the only difference with this great-grandchild, the XBB.1.5, is that it's got it binds better to the cells. It also have a whole spike protein suite of mutations, so what helps it to evade our antibodies. But it is not more dangerous. It's only fast spreading. It loves to go to the upper respiratory tract mucosa, giving symptoms like rhinitis or sinusitis with a cough. I recently, this week, had my first patient with this XBB.1.5, and the patient came in because he's now aware. And I say thanks to the media. He came in and said, listen, I started yesterday with a sore throat and a bit of a body aches and pain, and not felt very well or slept very well during the night. And this morning I woke up with this sort of rhinitis and post-nasal drip. We tested and he's positive. But he is not very sick. And this is how we see the Omicron with all its subvariants. The majority of patients so far is mild cases. And I think there is no reason to panic. Minister is absolutely correct. Also, I need to make people aware that this XBB.1.5, at this stage, nowhere in the world is it driving a second or a third or a fifth wave. It's just fast spreading with higher numbers, but not driving a wave on its own. And I think, again, the Minister of Health made the correct decision not to bring back any strict lockdowns, but we need to make people aware that there is infections going on. We're still in the pandemic. The World Health Organization will only sit the end of this month to decide whether we still need to use the term pandemic worldwide and what the outcomes would be. That we don't know, but we would know hopefully in February whether this is changing.
That's interesting. So on the one hand, we're hearing that because of the spike protein of this particular subvariant, it's able to essentially bypass immunization. But on the other, there are calls for people to continue vaccinating. Help us square these two things.
Okay, a very good question. So the spike protein just help it to evade our antibodies. We have never said that vaccination of any of the SARS-CoV-2 variants will protect you 100%. What we do say, and what is being proven so far, is that your vaccines will so far seems to protect you or previous infections against severe disease. Now, the problem with the severe disease is those patients who are at risk for the severe disease, like your elderly patients, patients with a lot of chronic diseases, patients with immunocompromised diseases, whether they're young or old, those ones are at bigger risk of getting severe disease. Doesn't matter whether it's a mild variant going around predominantly. So you would like those people to make sure that they are vaccinated. We know that the vaccines also, as well as your own antibodies, lose their protection around about 6 months going forward. So we do not want healthy people to go and get vaccines and boosters. We cannot vaccinate you out of a pandemic at this stage, but we can control the severe diseases. I also want to make one point here, and that is, even though you might be 65, very, very healthy, not suffering from any chronic diseases, I need to make you aware that even if you get mild COVID or mild Omicron, whether it's a subvariant, whether it's Omicron itself, you can still get long COVID. And this is something, again, that people need to decide for themselves. And I would like to emphasize the long COVID. The study shows that people between the age of 41 and especially 60 are very much prone with long COVID symptoms. And I presume that same will happen for older patients above the age of 60. So this was studies done at a certain group of age group of people. And so you as the public out there, you need to make your own decision. You need to go and decide, am I eligible or at risk for severe disease? What is my current health status?
Right.
Can I afford to get long COVID going forward, even if I get mild diseases? And where are my vaccines status or my vaccination status? Where is my status? And take a good look at your health and make a decision. And at this stage, government is not going to make that decision for you. You need to make that decision. I hope this makes sense.
It's crystal clear, Doc. And it's interesting that you've introduced into our discussion this concept of long COVID. I remember the first time that term was coined, so to speak. We were even struggling to actually define what we mean by long COVID, because there's just so many different variations of that manifesting in people's lives. Are we any closer to having even some kind of scientific definition of what having long COVID looks, feels, entails?
Yes, a very good article or studies that showed that long COVID, so there's two phases. There's an initial phase, or what they call a short-term phase, and then there's a long-term phase. So now the short-term phase is where patients for 3 to 4 months can complain of chest pains, myalgia, that's muscle pains, wrist pains, cough, and even a dizziness. So that is the short-term phase. That will go away. Then you have, unfortunately, the long phase. And the long phase can take up to a year or even more for any improvement. And those patients might suffer from smell problems, cognitive impairment. They can't remember, it's that fogginess of the mind. They can be short of breath. Weakness, doctor, I'm so weak, I'm tired, I don't feel well, and then the palpitations. So that is the long COVID. This is from new studies, and I think it helps us a bit better to distinguish about patients, whether you had long COVID, whether it's a short-term phase or the long-term phase that you are. Where are you in that? But now I also need to make people aware that if you haven't tested, when you have, let's say you are waking up today, you're not feeling well, tomorrow you decided, no, I'm just going to stay in bed, I'm not going to the doctor, and you are having Omicron or any of the other variants going around, and we do not document it, and 2 or 3 weeks later you come to the surgery and say to me, you're not feeling well, you had a bit of a flu 2 or 3 weeks ago, now you are struggling with smell or all these body aches and pains. It is extremely difficult then for me to say that this might be a side effect from long COVID, that you are suffering, and to give you better advice. So it is important to test. I know maybe if you're in hospital with severe disease, that's something different. But at primary healthcare level, people think, well, it's Omicron, it's a mild disease, I'm not going to be very sick, I'm going to be sick for 1 or 2 days. But the problem is when you start with long COVID, there's a lot of, it can be very, very costly if I need to do all the tests to exclude anything else. And then in the end of the day, say to you, it might probably that you had 3 or 2 months ago, COVID, which we didn't diagnose.
Sure.
So please, just take cognizance of this.
Yeah, there's certainly a value in being able to diagnose this at an early stage. Dr. Coetzee, let's get back to our discussion around variants. I mean, at the start of the pandemic, we had always been told that COVID-19, like any other virus, will continue mutating. The real fear, of course, is around what the next mutation may bring about. So far, we've dealt with the kind of variations that don't necessarily add complications to our current complements of vaccines. I wonder whether there's still that threat potentially of another mutation that may come about that may, God forbid, bypass the vaccines and essentially force us to almost, I guess, kind of rethink ways through which people can protect themselves from severe disease and illness. I mean, and death.
You are absolutely right again. So for now, we know what we have. We're lucky that the SARS-CoV-2 variants didn't evolve in more severe diseases, and that we are sitting with predominantly mild diseases. I'm not talking about what happened during Delta. But the future is totally uncertain. And this is of concern to us all, because we know what we have, we don't know what we can get. We can get more fast-spreading or transmissible variants or subvariants, and that's fine. We can deal with that, as long as they don't give severe disease. The problem is the severe disease, and again, I think that's also where your immune system, your T cells, and would then need to prove how good they will protect you, as well as the vaccines, against severe disease. So, yes, you're absolutely right. We know what we have now. We know where we are coming from. But there's no guarantees to where we are going. And, again, very, very important question that you asked, but there's not a clear answer on that.
Dr. Angelique Coetzee, it's always great getting your insights around these issues, even in the midst of a degree of uncertainty, so to speak. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Dr. Coetzee is the chair of the Health Committee for the South African United Business Confederation, I beg your pardon. Once again, thanks very much indeed. All right.